What's up, everyone? Tara Roberts here with 4 for 4, and we're talking running back trade targets for week 3. But before we get started, remember to like this video and subscribe. And if you want more fantasy insights and tips, head over to 4for4.com/plans and sign up for a subscription today. And exclusively for our YouTube audience, use promo code YouTube at checkout to save 25%. Now let's go ahead and dive right in with our first player, Josh Jacobs. People are panicking over Josh Jacobs, and this week is the perfect time to make an offer to secure a true workhorse running back. Not many running backs see the level of work that Josh Jacobs sees. The usage just hasn't translated to a strong fantasy performance this season. And fantasy managers might just be thinking that this is the level of production that we're going to see out of Jacobs moving forward because the Raiders are just a bad team. But the start of 2023 is actually oddly similar to the start of 2022 for Jacobs. Jacobs had less than 10 fantasy points in each of his first 2 games last season, just like this season. Jacobs had 19 carries in one game with subpar yardage and just 10 carries in another game at the start of the 2022 season. And this year, Jacobs started off with 19 carries in week 1 and 9 carries in week 2. This poor start isn't remotely indicative of a bad year for Jacobs. I would love to trade for a guy with zero competition in his backfield, receiving upside, and a strong history of thriving when given aggressive workloads, and his coaching staff has zero reason to manage his workload. Next up, we have Jonathan Taylor. The Deion Jackson experiment ended very quickly, and Zach Moss took over as the lead back for Indianapolis. Moss actually looked very good, but that's not remotely surprising given the fact that he faced the Houston defense. But this isn't about Moss. This is about Anthony Richardson. Richardson is playing at a level a lot higher than us expected, and myself included. I thought that he would be able to achieve, a decent level of production, but not this right off the bat. And playing within the AFC South, it honestly might not take a huge level of development from him to put them into contention within the division. If the Colts feel like they're in a place to compete, it makes zero sense to sit Jonathan Taylor when he is able to return from the pup. So start putting your feelers out there to see where the JT manager is at in your league. It's worth a shot to see what the price is for a guy who is likely to immediately jump back into a top 10 back when he's active. Another play that I want to talk about is Javonte Williams. The Broncos are 0-2 against 2 bad teams, and they just don't look like a team that really improved from last year. And Javonte Williams is coming off his second performance of under 10 fantasy points in PPR. I can see where there's pessimism and a lack of trust around the potential upside for Javonte. Fantasy points aside, I actually feel pretty good about his performance thus far. In week 1, he immediately had an equal split of the backfield with Samaje Perine with 13 carries for 52 yards and 4 receptions on 6 targets for 5 yards. And in week 2, he had the exact same percentage in snaps and had 12 carries for 44 yards and 2 receptions, but he outperformed Samaje Perine, who was on the field a pretty good amount of time, but only had 1 carry and 3 receptions. And oddly enough, the 1 rushing touchdown randomly went to Jaleel McLaughlin on his 1 carry in the game. This was a performance for Javonte that I looked at and said, okay, I see the progress. I see the commitment. I can walk away from this feeling like Javonte is destined to be the RB1 in Denver. It's worth it to put your feelers out there and see what the value is. And one more running back, Kenneth Gainwell. You might be looking at me crazy for saying go buy Kenneth Gainwell, but hear me out before you start to judge me. I am not suggesting that you actually go and make a trade directly for Gainwell. Use Gainwell as an add-on to another trade. General perception is that the insane performance from DeAndre Swift that he had in week 2 means that Gainwell is pretty much useless. Philadelphia would be crazy to go back and use Gainwell after Swift's eye-popping 28 carries, 175 yards, and 1 touchdown performance. But I actually think it's probably crazier to expect that they would give that level of volume on a weekly basis to a running back that has never shown the ability to sustain that level of volume. I'm not saying that this backfield is going to tilt back to Gainwell, but we know the Eagles coaching staff loves Gainwell, and we know factually that he will play above Rashad Penny and Boston Scott. So at worst, Gainwell is the handcuff behind a running back that has a history of struggling with putting together a full season. With all the Swift hype, Gainwell is someone that you can just tack on to a trade for negligible costs, and then boom, you've got a nice handcuff running back with a little bit more upside on your bench. And another running back that we can talk about is Breece Hall. If the Breece Hall manager in your league is panicked over his week 2 performance of less than 1 fantasy point and the prospect of an entire season with Zach Wilson, see if you can grab Hall below cost. I get the panic. I too fell for the trap of thinking that week 1 performance of the big runs and huge plays was going to be the norm for Hall. We knew that he was going to be eased back into the season, but after that glorious start to the season, we might have had unrealistic expectations. At the same time, Dallas is an extremely difficult matchup. Their defense is elite. Even a running back like Saquon Barkley, whose offense literally runs through him, could only manage 51 yards on the ground against Dallas. If Hall came out guns blazing against Dallas, we should probably just go ahead and just save him a spot in Canton. But that didn't happen. This was a bad performance against a really good defense, but it doesn't mean that that's going to be the norm moving forward. The Jets' overall schedule is pretty running back friendly. Eventually, Hall's workload will grow beyond his measly 34% snap count, and while Dalvin Cook will likely remain a solid part of the offense, Hall's talent will ultimately shine through. If you can afford to acquire Hall and keep him on your bench for a couple of weeks, you could reap huge benefits in the back half of the fantasy season. Thank you for watching this video. Be sure to like the video and comment below. And if you want more fantasy insights and tips, head over to 4for4.com/plans and sign up for a subscription today. And exclusively for our YouTube audience, use promo code YouTube at checkout to save 25%.